On May 1, 2010, Nashville, Tennessee occupied a basin formed by the Cumberland River and its tributaries, including the Harpeth River and Mill Creek. The city's storm drainage system was designed for typical spring rainfall patterns, brief intense events followed by clear intervals allowing runoff dispersal. The Cumberland River, controlled upstream by Wolf Creek Dam and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers reservoir system, maintained predictable spring flows. Urban development had expanded across floodplains in Davidson County over 4 decades, with infrastructure assuming drainage capacity sufficient for historical rainfall distributions. No flood of recordable magnitude had impacted Nashville's urban core since 1975. Soil moisture levels entering May were normal for the season. Nashville occupied a topographic basin in Middle Tennessee, where the Cumberland River descended from the Cumberland Plateau through a valley approximately 15 miles wide. The river entered Davidson County from the northeast, curved through downtown Nashville, and exited southwest toward Kentucky. Elevation in the basin ranged from 385 feet at the river to 1,100 feet on surrounding ridges. Mill Creek, Browns Creek, and Richland Creek drained northern and western slopes into the Cumberland within city limits. The Harpeth River, a separate tributary system, converged with the Cumberland 15 miles downstream from downtown. Urban development covered 526 square miles of Davidson County. The downtown district occupied the Cumberland's immediate floodplain, protected by a system of levees and floodwalls constructed after the 1975 flood. Residential neighborhoods extended across tributary valleys and hillsides. Commercial corridors followed interstate highways I-40, I-65, and I-24, which intersected near the river. The storm sewer network, built incrementally from the 1950s through 1990s, channeled runoff from impervious surfaces into tributaries and directly into the Cumberland. The Cumberland River basin upstream of Nashville covered 15,900 square miles. Wolf Creek Dam, 90 miles upstream in Kentucky, regulated flow through Center Hill and Old Hickory reservoirs. Normal spring operations released water to maintain navigation depth and prevent downstream flooding. The Corps of Engineers managed releases based on rainfall forecasts and reservoir levels. Channel capacity through Nashville was rated at 100,000 cubic feet per second before overtopping floodwalls. Soil conditions in early May reflected typical spring moisture. The previous winter had delivered near-average precipitation. Groundwater tables were normal. Vegetation cover on undeveloped slopes was consistent with regional deciduous forest and grassland. No drought or saturation conditions existed. Rainfall in April had totaled 3.8 inches, slightly below the long-term average of 4.4 inches. Forecast models for early May indicated a chance of thunderstorms associated with a slow-moving frontal boundary, but no alerts for excessive rainfall were issued before May 1. On April 30, a low-pressure system developed over Arkansas and moved east-northeast toward Tennessee. A stationary frontal boundary extended from the low-pressure center across northern Alabama into the southern Appalachians. Southerly winds ahead of the front transported moisture from the Gulf of Mexico into the Tennessee Valley. Precipitable water values, the total moisture content in the atmospheric column, rose to 1.8 inches, approximately 150% of the climatological normal for early May. Convective cells began forming along the frontal boundary over northern Alabama on the afternoon of April 30. These cells moved northeast at 10 to 15 miles per hour, following the orientation of the front. As each cell matured, new cells developed to the southwest, creating a training pattern, successive storms moving over the same geographic area. The boundary remained nearly stationary due to a blocking high-pressure system over the Atlantic Ocean, which prevented the front from advancing eastward. By midnight on May 1, radar imagery showed continuous bands of heavy precipitation extending from northern Alabama into middle Tennessee. Rainfall rates in individual cells reached 2 to 3 inches per hour. The training pattern directed these cells repeatedly across Davidson County and adjacent counties. Between midnight and 6:00 a.m. on May 1, rainfall totals in Nashville exceeded 4 inches. The National Weather Service issued a flash flood warning for Davidson County at 4:13 a.m. The convective system persisted through May 1 and into May 2. Atmospheric soundings indicated continued moisture transport and instability favorable for thunderstorm development. The frontal boundary moved less than 50 miles over 36 hours. By the evening of May 1, cumulative rainfall totals in Nashville ranged from 6 to 10 inches depending on location. Some areas in western Davidson County recorded 11 inches. The Weather Service upgraded warnings to include river flooding as tributary streams began exceeding bankful capacity. Precipitation continued overnight on May 1 too. Rainfall rates decreased slightly to 1 to 2 inches per hour, but accumulation continued without interruption. By 6:00 a.m. on May 2, two-day totals reached 13.5 inches at Nashville International Airport. Stations in western Davidson County reported 18 to 19 inches. These values exceeded the 100-year recurrence interval for two-day rainfall, which was calculated at 9.5 inches. The convective pattern began weakening on the afternoon of May 2 as the frontal boundary finally shifted eastward. Soil absorption capacity in the Nashville basin became saturated during the morning hours of May 1. Initial rainfall on April 30 infiltrated normally into soil layers, with excess water moving downslope as shallow subsurface flow. By dawn on May 1, the upper 12 inches of soil reached field capacity, the maximum water content soil can hold against gravity. Further rainfall could not infiltrate and moved directly into surface runoff. Runoff generation accelerated rapidly after saturation. Rainfall on impervious surfaces, roads, parking lots, rooftops, entered storm sewers immediately. On pervious surfaces, saturation excess runoff moved downslope as sheet flow, concentrating in swales and small channels. Stream gauges on Mill Creek and Browns Creek recorded sharp rises in discharge beginning at 7:00 a.m. on May 1. Mill Creek, with a drainage area of 23 square miles, rose from 50 cubic feet per second at midnight to 1,200 cubic feet per second by 8:00 a.m. Urban storm drainage systems began exceeding capacity during mid-morning on May 1. Nashville's sewer network was designed for rainfall intensities with return periods of 10 to 25 years. The sustained high-intensity rainfall exceeded design capacity across large portions of the city. Water backed up in storm drains, flooding streets and low-lying areas. Manholes ejected water under pressure. Retention basins filled and overflowed. By noon on May 1, tributary streams throughout Davidson County exceeded bankful stage. Mill Creek, normally 30 to 50 feet wide, spread across its floodplain to widths of 500 to 800 feet. Browns Creek overtopped culverts under I-65, flooding the interstate. Richland Creek, draining the western suburbs, rose 12 feet above normal levels. Stream gauge data showed flood peaks occurring nearly simultaneously across tributaries, indicating basin-wide saturation rather than localized flooding. Continued rainfall on May 1 maintained runoff at extreme rates. Soils remained saturated, converting all incoming precipitation to runoff. Hydrograph analysis indicated that by the afternoon of May 1, approximately 85% of rainfall was entering streams within 1 hour of falling. This rapid concentration overwhelmed channel capacity throughout the basin. Peak discharges on tributary streams reached values 5 to 10 times greater than previously recorded floods. The Cumberland River at Nashville rose above flood stage at 10:00 p.m. on May 1. Flood stage, defined as the level at which water begins affecting structures, was 40 feet on the river gauge at downtown Nashville. The river had been at 15 feet, typical for early May, on April 30. Inflow from saturated tributaries, combined with runoff from the upstream basin, drove the rapid rise. By 6:00 a.m. on May 2, the Cumberland reached 48 feet, exceeding the level of the 1975 flood, previously the highest on record at 47.5 feet. Water began overtopping sections of the floodwall system in the Opryland area on the east side of downtown. The floodwall, a concrete barrier 3 to 6 feet high built on earthen levees, was designed to protect against a 100-year flood. The 1975 flood had been classified as approximately a 75-year event. The river continued rising through May 2. At noon, the gauge read 50.8 feet. Water moved through breaches in the floodwall and through gaps at road crossings. The Grand Ole Opry House, located inside the protected area, flooded to a depth of 5 feet. Adjacent hotels and retail structures also flooded. LP Field, the stadium for the Tennessee Titans NFL team, located on the opposite riverbank, flooded to the lower seating levels. Upstream reservoir releases contributed to the peak. Wolf Creek Dam operators increased releases on May 1 to prevent reservoir overtopping, adding flow to an already rising river. Old Hickory Dam, 18 miles upstream from Nashville, released water at near-capacity rates. The combined reservoir releases and tributary inflows created a peak discharge at Nashville estimated at 272,000 cubic feet per second, occurring at 7:00 a.m. on May 3. This exceeded the 1975 peak of 194,000 cubic feet per second by 40%. The river crested at 51.9 feet at 7:32 a.m. on May 3. This level was 11.9 feet above flood stage and 4.4 feet above the previous record. Water covered Riverfront Park and Water Avenue in downtown Nashville. Broadway, the main street in the downtown entertainment district, flooded to depths of 1 to 2 feet. The river remained above flood stage for 48 hours after the peak, receding to 40 feet by the evening of May 4. Channel capacity through Nashville was exceeded for approximately 60 hours. The river's normal width of 400 feet expanded to over 1,500 feet in some sections. Floodwaters extended up to half a mile inland from the river in low-lying areas. Structures within the 100-year floodplain, previously protected by levees, sustained water damage. The flood-inundated areas designated as protected zones in FEMA flood maps, exposing discrepancies between design standards and actual flood magnitude. Electrical infrastructure failures began on the afternoon of May 1, as floodwaters reached substations and distribution equipment. Nashville Electric Service reported 17 substations flooded or shut down for safety. Power outages affected 48,000 customers on May 1, increasing to 89,000 by May 2. Substations in the Opryland area and along Briley Parkway lost function when water depth exceeded equipment foundations. Restoration required draining, cleaning, and testing equipment, a process extending over multiple days. Wastewater treatment capacity was compromised when floodwater infiltrated sewer lines and overwhelmed treatment plants. The Central Wastewater Treatment Plant, located on the Cumberland River, flooded on May 2, forcing partial shutdown. Sewage overflows discharged untreated wastewater into the river at multiple locations. The Metro Water Services Department reported 1.2 billion gallons of combined stormwater and sewage entered the Cumberland between May 1 and May 4. Transportation networks failed systematically. Interstate 24 flooded near the I-40 junction, closing both directions on May 2. Water depth reached 6 feet on the roadway. Interstate 40 closed in both directions through downtown Nashville. Multiple bridges over Mill Creek and Browns Creek were closed due to debris accumulation or structural concerns. Nashville International Airport suspended operations on May 2 when water entered the terminal building and covered runways. Floodwater depth at the terminal reached 3 feet. Drinking water supply faced contamination risk when the Alejandro Water Treatment Plant lost power on May 2. Backup generators maintained partial operation, but production dropped 50%. Metro Water Services issued a precautionary boil water advisory for 300,000 customers on May 3. The advisory remained in effect for 5 days, while the plant restored full operation and distribution lines were flushed. Commercial and residential flooding expanded geographically through May 2 and 3 as the Cumberland River peak moved through Nashville. The Opryland Hotel, a 2,800-room complex, flooded with water depths reaching 10 feet in ground floor areas on May 2. The facility evacuated all guests on May 1. Soundcheck, a retail and entertainment complex adjacent to the hotel, sustained similar flooding. Schermerhorn Symphony Center in downtown Nashville flooded to a depth of 4 feet in the basement, damaging mechanical systems. Population displacement totaled approximately 10,000 residents evacuated from homes in Davidson County and adjacent counties. Evacuation orders were issued for neighborhoods along Mill Creek, Browns Creek, and the Cumberland River floodplain on May 1 and May 2. Emergency shelters opened at 15 locations, housing 1,200 people at peak occupancy on May 3. The American Red Cross coordinated shelter operations and distributed supplies. Property damage assessments conducted in May and June 2010 identified 10,000 damaged residential structures in Davidson County. Of these, 2,500 homes sustained major damage requiring structural repair or rebuilding. The Metro Nashville Department of Codes Administration issued 3,800 residential demolition permits in the 6 months following the flood. An additional 1,200 commercial structures reported flood damage. Total property damage estimates for Davidson County reached $1.5 billion. Fatalities directly attributed to the flood totaled 11 individuals in Davidson County. Causes included drowning in vehicles caught in floodwaters, drowning in residences, and 1 electrocution. An additional 10 deaths occurred in adjacent counties, bringing the Middle Tennessee total to 21. Most deaths occurred on May 1 and May 2 during the period of rapid water rise. Vehicle-related drownings accounted for 9 of the 11 Davidson County deaths, occurring when drivers attempted to cross flooded roadways. Emergency services responded to 2,300 flood-related calls between May 1 and May 3. The Nashville Fire Department conducted 130 water rescues using boats and helicopters. The Tennessee National Guard deployed 400 personnel on May 2 to assist with rescues and security in evacuated areas. Search and rescue operations continued through May 4, with a focus on checking flooded structures for stranded individuals. Infrastructure damage extended to schools, hospitals, and public facilities. 11 Metro Nashville public schools sustained flood damage, with 2 buildings declared total losses. Vanderbilt University Medical Center, located near the Cumberland River, evacuated patients from ground floor departments on May 2 as a precaution. The Country Music Hall of Fame in downtown Nashville flooded in lower levels, but did not sustain collection damage due to artifact storage on upper floors.